Let's get it. Let's go. Another episode of the Art of Hustle podcast. How you doing?
Good. Really good.
What's been your favorite thing about podcasting so far?
I think just finding the time where we would usually just be like sitting on the couch relaxing is like, let's go do an episode. Let's go record. And it like gets us away from all the screens and use it like exercises our brain in a way together.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mental exercise.
Yeah. Yeah. It's either like you want to go work out or do you want to go work the brain? And I like it. And I've been enjoying it. What about you?
I think just the creativity of setting everything up and then picking a topic, talking about it, and just the whole process to get to like the point of talking.
Yeah.
And then kind of getting that flow state of just like talking about, whatever we're talking about or creating the new idea of how to make the podcast better.
Yeah, I like that. So, kick us off. What are we talking about today?
Today, we are talking about interracial marriage.
Ooh.
The two sides of the different fences.
Okay.
Well, same fence, different sides.
Yeah, same fence, different sides.
You want to break down what that means? How we think about interracial marriage and a black and white couple?
Yes. So, every culture has this is stereotyping, so it's not, don't quote me for this, but every culture has some of their things that they believe in and that they kind of like is the way that they do life. And everyone, when you grow up, you have things that you love about your childhood and things that maybe you want to change.
Right. And so for us, we break it down of there's two different houses and there's a black household, white household, and we each have our own yard. So what does that look like on one side or the other, and then putting those good and bad things together to create our own backyard?
Yeah. And it's like there's some of the times I want to hop over the fence and go into Corn's backyard, and sometimes he wants to hop over the fence and come in my backyard, and sometimes we sit on top of the fence and we look at both and we examine and we create our own backyard and our own vision for what we want.
Going back to your childhood, what's one thing that you appreciated on your side of the culture that maybe isn't done in my culture or other cultures?
I would say it was very important, and I don't know if this was like a cultural thing or our family, but it was very important to have fun and go on vacations. And I really enjoyed that. And I didn't know growing up that that was a privilege, but like going on airplanes and going and traveling and doing a lot of that stuff was something that I really enjoyed growing up. What would you say about you? Your culture was something that you really enjoyed?
I think the community aspect, like we had a very relationship-based living. So like neighbors, friends, like we had a big network of people that we'd like have hangouts with, Christmas cookies, all the fun things. So I really appreciate that growing up and just having like kind of a lot of resources around me. I didn't grow up with a lot of aunts, uncles, cousins around me, but like neighbors and friends quickly became family. So like learning that skill set early on, I feel like it was something that was very valuable.
Yeah. I do have to say your family has always had like open door concept. Like I remember the first Thanksgiving we were dating and I had at your house, and I swear there were so many people that would just walk into the house, grab a plate, fix them up a big plate for Thanksgiving, sit down, eat, give everybody hugs, and then peace out. I'm over there like, who was that? Like who?
Yeah.
And it was like friends, family. It didn't matter. Like everyone knew that they were welcome at the Edisons and that there was always food and that it was always going to be a loving place.
Yeah. My parents didn't play around with like the food aspect, especially like that things we were talking about. Like there was probably 4 different Thanksgivings like in that same night with people coming by hanging out.
I had never experienced so much food and good food. Like it was a whole new world. I was like, oh my gosh.
It was fun growing up like that. Like that was our normal. Like after school, weekends, birthday parties. Like there was anybody can come over, get a plate. whether they after school, before a football game, after a football game, like it was very open and loving. So I think that's one thing that we've tried to model in our marriage and in our family, and especially the kids are going, getting to school now, having friends. Like I want to make that important because I think there's a lot of value in kind of that community based living and open door policy and just like having respect for the home.
Yeah. And I think what your parents did an amazing job at is creating a safe place. Your home was your safe place, not only your safe place, but your friend's safe place, family safe place. And because of that, it makes you feel so secure, and it makes you know that you always have somewhere to go and someone to talk to, which I really want my kids. I really want our home to be that place for our kids and our family and their friends.
For sure. What's one thing you have wanted to change about your side of the fence or improve or
Going off of that, probably the lack of community. Like I would say growing up, it was kind of like, this is our little family and we're going to do everything that we can do to become like successful. And you don't really ask questions about other people's lives. It's very, what's the word I'm thinking? Solitude, solidary. I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
But it was kind of like it. You just didn't depend on your neighbor or anyone to help you get through life. It was like, this is our thing. These are our struggles. These are our wins, and that's just how it was. So I think the lack of community, then in contrast to becoming a part of your community, I was like, whoa, like life is hard, and it's so much more enjoyable doing it with other people.
It's interesting you said that. That's one thing you changed because that's one thing that I've appreciated about your side of the fence has been like that kind of unit, that family unit, and like we're gonna ride together, we're gonna die
Yeah.
together, we're gonna like build together, like the closeness. And my family grew up very close, but like just for reference, like your family grew up on a lot of land, had family close by, and just like did things together, like just on the weekends, the Saturday, like all the activities, all the meals, all the things. Like it was super cool having that like singular focus on just your family.
Yeah.
Well, I think sometimes in the community-based living, there could be a lot more distractions, a lot more volume of people, which can be good or bad, right? And
Yeah.
like it's just more noise, more people
Right.
that are around.
Yeah. I would say my family, like sitting down and having meals together. Like my mom always had hot food ready, and we'd sit down as a family of 5 and pray and eat and clean up together. And I really loved that, and it was some of my favorite times growing up. And it's another thing that I think are building in our little unit of meals, are a time for us to sit down as a family, and you get that there's no screens, there's no distractions, and you ask each other how the day is going, how is everyone feeling. It's a nice little check-in.
Absolutely. I feel like one thing on Saturday mornings, there was always like breakfast, walk, chores, then like hang out, fun games, and then like lunchtime, a rest time, activity, fun games. Like there's definitely a formula in your household to the weekends, which I really appreciated because like that structure, like it allows for success and just like allows for the family to understand the roles and how people serve in the household. I think that's something that's very like respectable and hard to build, like as a parent trying to build it now.
Yeah. No, I'm a sucker for structure.
Sometimes. I get 5 days out of the week, not you're about 4.5 days out of the week structure.
Did you have any, let's call them issues, with your family when you started dating and talking about marrying a white woman?
Definitely. It was I remember growing up, there were just these comments that pop up and stick out in my memory. And shout out to my Aunt Tanya. rest in peace. She was like my second mom. Lived in California. My cousin Jeffrey, we were super close, and we'd always go down to their house like a couple times a year. And I remember, I don't remember why this was talked about, but I'll never forget my childhood. My aunt was like, "Yep, you better not ever bring a white girl home." And I remember just looking at her like, this is like, I mean, middle school, elementary school, so like,
Right.
girls weren't even that serious, but it was just like, all right, that's interesting. But I remember that was kind of the first thing that like was like the tip of the iceberg, and then a lot of it, I think, is just like a lack of cross cultural understanding. A lot of scars historically between the black and white cultures, and so I think a lot of it is fear based, a lack of understanding, and I think a lack of desire to try to like build relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of family in California, have a lot of family in Maryland, and so like I've always been exposed to diversity, and growing up in Washington State, right, typically more whites than blacks, so like I had to learn how to like navigate through that. But for other people that are in more black dominant areas, like that was
Right.
very foreign concept. So it was interesting at first, but there's been obviously like I have you're my wife, you're white, my sister-in-law's white, a lot of my best friends' wives are white. So like there's been a huge integration in our generation as we kind of developed. What about you? I feel like it's been a little bit different for your side.
Um, yeah, I like very much stepped out of what I stepped out of the box, I should say, dating you and getting married to you. I didn't have a lot of experience with cultures. I was homeschooled out on, like you said, a lot of land, and we really only hung out with family. And my brother had a lot of friends. I had some friends, but it was mainly my brother always having friends over. And I don't think that there was any, I can't remember any culture with those friends. So it was very, I was around a lot of people that looked like me. And I remember my mom telling me that my brother was going to have two black roommates in college.
Yeah, that's wild.
And I was shocked.
Thinking about it, that's wild.
That was truly my first like experience with like living or like being close to the black culture.
Right.
And I remember like, and again that was you. Like you were one of the black roommates, and starting to like visit my brother and experience the black culture, I fell in love with the black culture. Like it was so appeasing to me, so much of it. I think because it was very different from what I was, how I was like, what I was used to. And it was beautiful. But going back to your question, yes, there was, even for, my parents love the, what out of you. But I think it was definitely even for them, like, oh, Hannah's dating a black man. And, they're just one generation above me. So I know that the generation then above them, like their parents, I'm sure it was shocking to them. And there was a few comments said that I was like, you don't understand Cornelius. So like, I'm not going to even let that like comment come into my brain. But it definitely, looking back on it, I was like, wow, I didn't even realize, like you said, the tip of the iceberg. Like you and I starting to date was just the tip of the iceberg of molding these two cultures together.
Absolutely, and still molding like like parenting styles, grandparenting styles, vacation styles. Like we're still adapting now with our kids into our integration. What were some of the things that stood out to you like in those early years of black culture that you were that you liked?
I think it was just like I said, I came from a lot of structure, and there was just not as much structure. You kind of could do what you felt was right when you wanted to do it. And it seemed very freeing to me coming from like my background. So that was one thing. I do have to say another thing is Cornelius and I started dating. How old were you?
We started dating
Yeah.
20, 21.
Okay. This man didn't have his driver's license.
Just putting me on blast.
And that shocked me. And I'm not saying that that necessarily is a cultural thing, but that's like another thing. It was like, it was defying societal norms. Like,
I'm very resourceful.
you are very, like, you are. But it's just is a thing that I was like, no, when you turn 15, you get your permit. And when you turn 16, you get your driver's license. And that's how the world works. And here Cornelius is 2021, and he finds a way to get around with no driver's license.
Just for the record, I was not driving without a license. I just had people drive for me. I don't know.
That yes. Thank you.
I had to clarify that.
No laws were broken.
Maybe.
What about you?
I think just kind of going back to the structure, and I became very curious in college. College opened up a lot of my curiosity to like how many different styles of living there were.
Mm.
And so obviously in high school, like, you know, I had kind of whites, blacks, Hispanics, like had Asians, had a little everything. So like I had like a basic understanding of a few different cultures. But then in college, like college football and seeing the elevation of like my black teammates, my white teammates, just like seeing the differences, I started becoming more fascinated by. And then after living kind of with black teammates my freshman year, sophomore year, and then I started hanging with Josh, and I was like, oh, he's different. Like his mind thinks differently, he operates differently, he behaves differently, like socially, and then like especially like financially. That's probably when the curiosity came. And like I was I remember when the first question I asked Josh, I was like, yeah, man, I'm thinking about like getting an apartment. Like, would you be down? He's like, oh yeah, you know, he was leaving the dorms for the first time. My first question was, do you pay your bills on time? And he was like, yeah, of course. Like, he kind of felt like dumbfounded by me asking that.
Right. Like, of course. That's like rule number one.
Yeah.
Pay your bills.
So, like, after that, I was like, all right, he's good. And then just, like, after that, we just developed just, like, a cool friendship of just, we started learning about each other a lot. And that's when you kind of came in the picture and offered your perspective of the white female culture. And then just, like, oh, wow, that's different. Like, there's different rules for different people, different genders, different cultures. And so like, and then just going to your parents' house and just how open and loving and how accepting they were, even though I did look different, and just like it was normal. I think a lot of this has to do with like Christian principles of just like, you know, loving humans and loving people and serving people. And so I think all of that combined made me really curious.
Yeah. I have to give a shout out to both of our parents because I know from day one, I felt loved and welcomed in your house, and I felt respected. And I am sure that there was a lot of like fear and unknowns for, you know, your parents and for my parents. And they really like went through that with a lot of grace and a lot of like acceptance for like trusting, you know, your parents trusted you that you would only bring home someone that you loved and that you respected, and that was a good fit for you, and same for my parents. And I like, now that I'm a parent, you know, it's like I want to remember how your parents made me feel, and like make sure that no matter who my children, like whenever that day comes, if that day comes, like whoever they bring home, that I trust them and love whoever they choose, no matter anything, you know, that I'm they know that this is a safe place and that I love them endlessly.
Let's talk about some of the challenges.
Ooh, okay.
Obviously, it's not all picture perfect and
Mm-mm.
not all openness. And obviously, our close family and friends respect us individually as a married couple, as a family. When I say challenges, thinking back to the last 10 years, what comes to mind?
I was very naive to racism. I remember like one of our first talks we had, I straight up told Corn, racism isn't a thing anymore. Like people don't see color. It's everyone's nice. Everyone, it doesn't matter what color your skin is. Like you're gonna get treated the same way. Very naive. Um, Racism is still a thing, and again, I believe a lot of racism is due to a lack of knowledge and is very fear based. People haven't taken time to learn what the other side of the fence looks like. And so they come up with their own ideas of what it is, and then they portray that on a human. And there have been many scenarios where, because I have walked in holding Corn's hand or hanging on his arm, that things have been said and we have been treated differently. And at first it really hurt me. And I was so angry to a point where I wanted to make an entire scene about it. But I would say over time, my heart has been humbled in the sense that it has way less to do about me and you and way more to do about them. And that if anything, it's maybe a chance for me to share some of the beautiful things that have come from our relationship and our cultures blending in. What would you say about you for the last 10 years?
Yeah, just kind of going back on that. I remember just the education part was very important about what comes with looking how I look.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just the naiveness that you had, and I was like, all right, just wait. Like, there's gonna be times where we will be challenged, you will be challenged, I'll be challenged. But do you remember what I said to you when that happened? When I told you like those would come,
I don't.
I said, just trust me and listen to my voice, because both my parents did a great job educating me of like my behavior, my mannerisms, how I act in certain situations. Not to change who I am, but just understand my hot spots. And one challenge comes to mind was when we came to Bend for the very first time, and we were out kind of restaurants, bars, hanging out, and it was me and you, our best friends, Jason, Helena, black male, white female, and I'll never forget the intensity of that feeling of like being in a small place, and just the eyes, the judgment, the curiosity,
well, there's comments
the
too.
fear, like
Yeah.
just our presence made people scared,
Yeah.
and like that's not an easy feeling to be around. And I remember people were like, I remember we were at the one bar, and we're sitting in the booth, and these people just kept staring at us. And so at this point, it was after like the third place too. So it was like,
Yeah. Well, and there's like a comment, don't quote me on this, but it was like, I can't believe that those females are with those guys.
yeah. And that's where, again, Jason and I, we grew up together, so we kind of know how to operate. And then we understand that the best situation for everybody is just us leaving. Like, there's never a good scenario where we stay and it gets escalated. So we left, and I was just like, where they falls out. Like,
Yeah.
lady was like running after us and stuff. But anyways,
Saying very
yeah.
rude
But
things.
I think the education, understanding, like you said, racism, and I don't know if racism is an accurate word. Maybe it is racism. Maybe it's just the ignorance to people who don't look like you, people who don't, work next to you, people outside of your social sphere. And once you try to understand those people, like, you will realize they're just like you. and they're just normal people who just like love to live life, hopefully, and like are good people and are trying to get better at what they're doing and add value to the community. But it's definitely interesting to navigate.
So now we live in Bend, Oregon, and now you have 3 kids in Bend, Oregon. How does that talk to me about that? I want to know like your thoughts, how you view it. Like there's a lack of diversity here, and what are some of your like ways that you're going to go about parenting your children here?
Yeah, what's been like, I looked at one time like 0.01% black people. Like I'll be lucky to see, I don't know, 2 black people in a day,
Yeah.
which is wild. I think that's one of my, it's my greatest blessing, my greatest curse. Like I really have a very unique opportunity that I think is given from God to change a lot of lives, and just to help people bridge the gap to a whole different culture. So like knowing that I am pretty sure that I'm gonna be the only black person that they see that day, interact with, like that's big. Like that's a big pressure, that's a big weight, that's a big opportunity for me to help them, love the next black person they may come across. Because hopefully, like when they think about a black person, they think about corn and not all those stereotypes that they may get from media or movies, whatever it may be. So raising my kids is definitely a challenge. It's probably the biggest challenge that I have in my life. And helping educate them, helping them understand who they are in a place that does not look like them is very hard. While understanding that like half of them, is white. And like that's a lot easier sided to navigate because we live in it. But helping them understand other parts of them and understanding who their family is, understand their history, understand what dad has gone through, obstacles that I had to overcome, obstacles that we had to overcome, and help them understand the potential obstacles that they'll overcome. And it's really just helping them develop that strength, that grit, that mental awareness to who they are and what they look like. So we'll see how that goes, but I believe that with the patience, the love of Jesus Christ, we can overcome, and we can develop the toolbox to continue to teach them for my sanity, for all that good stuff. And I've learned that living in a place that does not look like me can be very challenging, but I can build tools to help overcome that. I.e., going to the city, a few times a year, having friends and family come here. My parents moved here 3 years ago, so that's been huge. Just to have that home base feeling, connection. Your parents are here, so having that love, and just you have a lot of awesome family here that I get to connect with daily, and so that's huge for me. And I have a lot of good people in our community that it transcends race, but race is still a part of the equation.
Yeah. I remember someone, we'd been here for a couple of years, and they're like, in a way, they were like, Corn seems like he's fitting right in. He's fitting right in. He seems like he's doing awesome in Bend. And I was like, yeah, he is doing great. But I'm like, there is a lack of diversity. And they're like, well, yeah, I mean, but how does that really affect him? And I was like, well, imagine going through your entire day and you've seen one person in your entire day that looks like you. Not maybe they don't even look like you, but they have the same color of skin as you. And everyone else you see is a different color. And you stick out like a sore thumb everywhere you go. And they're like, whoa, I never thought about it. I'm like, yeah. Like, I remember one day you're like, hey, Hannah, just look at everybody that we drive past.
Yeah.
And see if you see one person of color. I didn't. The whole time. They all look just like me. And I was like, dang, I only had one in my entire life, one experience where I had those feelings. Do you remember when that was?
College Park, Georgia. Yeah.
In a Target. And I was the only white person in that Target. And we walked out of there, and we were only in there for maybe 20 minutes. And I was emotionally drained.
Exhausted. Yeah, I remember that.
And I just like, everybody's eyes were on me. I felt like I had to act a certain way. I felt like I had to smile extra big so that I wasn't intimidating to
So
anyone.
you were safe.
Yeah. And I just wanted, I kind of had to like, I felt in a weird way like watching my back, just in the sense that I didn't want to rub anyone the wrong way. And I was like, I think about that often when I think about you and how proud I am of how you carry that weight daily around with you, of not seeing a lot of people that look like you.
Yeah, it's challenging, and there's been a lot of days that were hard, and just like developing the tools to understand it. Like all this was hitting me, and I didn't even understand what was going on with me. Like, you know, transitioning from football, this game that I've been playing forever, settling down in the city for the first time, you know, becoming a parent, becoming a business owner. I had a huge identity crisis. Our parents moving close to us, like all these things happened at one time that I really had to take time to individually address when I had the capacity, and addressing that, you know, cultural identity, like that was the heaviest one by far, because it hit me. I was like, wow, I am building a life where I am just so different and so unique and just so honestly a lot of time lost in who I am, because I have to have this professional persona like whenever I leave my house, because I might see clients and all these things, and it got to the point where I was like, I can't sustain this. I can't like keep up this energy, and to the point where I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna be who I am, and I'm gonna let all that go.
Yeah.
And did doing the work to understand who I am and just being that person. And you could like it or not, but this is who I'm gonna be, because this is what makes me happy. And this is the best version I am for myself, for my wife, for my kids, for my business, for my parents, and for my team. Like, and I still need to improve a lot of those things, which will always be a constant journey. But once I let go of like feeling like I had to be, you know, probably honestly the black guy or like the best trainer or X, Y, and Z, like my life became a lot better and a lot more authentic. And so now I'm hungry to like show the world who I am.
I like that. We're going to get a little deep here with this question. Are you ready?
I don't know. Maybe.
Do you remember the first time that you were called a racial slur?
I remember I've had a few points in my life where that affected me. I'm not sure the very, very, very first time. I remember the first time it made an impact on me, though. We were practicing football. We're at a high school or junior high field, just like practicing. It was me, best friend Jason, best friend Tyler, and our coach, Coach Keel, all black guys. And we lived in like a white area, and a car drove by, and they were like, "Go back to Africa, you effing N-words." And I remember my coach, like someone who I've looked up to and just like has been a role model in our lives up to that point. He like broke down and like I could just tell his energy just got off quickly. And looking back on it, I don't know if it was it wasn't about him. It was about us that we got because he knew who we were. He knew our integrity, our character, how hard we worked, and I saw him become broken for us, and that really impacted me to the damage that words can cause, and that started kind of my awareness, recognition, and it started testing the tools that my parents equipped me with of how do I respond, right? Like we could have, you know, we big football players, like we could have like did some damage, you know, and like we could have very hateful reaction, a very negative, upset, whatever, and we just took it and we're like, all right, that just happened. Like we good, we're a squad. We can do hard things together, and that was one of the like biggest points of my life.
That's amazing that your parents equipped you with the self-control, the confidence, the steadfastness in who you are to be able to handle that situation. What How did they do that?
They just told us, they were just honest with us that because of what it looked like in America, that comes with things. That when the officer pulls you over, that window goes all the way down, all the lights come on, your hands are tended to, and you don't move. You just wait and have a conversation with the man or female. When you're walking around in malls, that people may follow you because they're gonna think that you steal.
I remember one time we walked into Portland Mall, and second we walked in, the security person started following us. And at first I thought it was kind of a joke. You know, I was like, why is he? And I remember looking at you like, let's just go. And I'm like, screw that. No,
Yeah.
we're not gonna go. Like, what is good with that guy? And like I was
Fiery.
fiery.
What do you call Ava? Feisty? Spicy.
But it's that protective that I'm like, you don't have any idea who this person is, and all that you are doing right now is stereotyping him because of his skin, and it still makes me angry. Like I don't think we haven't had an experience like that
Probably because we don't shop.
lately. But it happens. It happens, and it's kudos to you and your parent and the way that you were raised to not fight that, and to know that that's not.
Well, again, it's just like I've talked a few times about the proactive versus reactive concept. My parents are very proactive in teaching us and educating us. Like, if my parents didn't teach us and we were just reactive to all that, yeah, anger, frustration, fighting, violence, like, those things would have been the outcome without the education. That would have been the emotional response to handling those things, because you're right, it's not fair. It's not okay. But these are things I'm trying to change in this world and teach my kids and like lead my mission statement to change this world, to make it okay. Like, we've been in business for 5 years, and we have only been the only black business in this city for 4 years, until somebody bought the laundromat.
Yeah.
Then my barber had a business that, things happened there that he didn't have. But these are like the barriers I'm trying to break to change the world. Because I've been through too much bullshit to let my kids keep going through bullshit. I remember one time me and my boy Jason went to this Chinese restaurant. I don't think he even remembers this, but it was a place where you like go, sit down, get a menu, order food, eat your food, pay, right? One of those normal restaurants. We get there and they're like, oh, we got to pay before we eat. And I mean, so young at the time,
That's
we didn't
crazy.
understand like what happened. And they wouldn't take our card or something. I was like, oh, we got a card. Like, no, y'all get cash. So there's a bank across the street, and I think we went back to my house because we were walking around. I was like, hey, Dad, you got cash? Like, they're not taking our card. They said we got to pay before we eat. Like, I ain't think none of it. My dad said, what? He said,
Get in the
what?
car.
No, he said, y'all sit down. I'll be right back. I still need to ask him what happened there, but all I know, we never ate at that restaurant again.
I believe it.
And looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, they definitely was on some funny business. Thought we were like dine and dash or something.
That's crazy.
And the thing is, like, yeah, it's messed up.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know this is where I don't know the experience they had, but I tell you what, they would not get the support of my business and my love and my influence, and like that's just their loss because they're missing out on knowing at that time two great kids
Oh.
who were just there to help the community. And
Eat some food.
I was just hungry. We were just hungry. You know, I'm a foodie, so. But we're going to keep figuring out ways to develop our kids and our marriage to be a shining light. You know, for couples that look like us, for families that look like us, for individuals and business who look like us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one thing my dad always said, he said, there's two words you got to respect when I say as a father and a man. What is it?
Let's go.
Let's go. Anytime my dad said that, when we've experienced it in our own personal relationship, like if there's some tension, if there's some racism, if there's some bad vibes, if I say let's go, we are gone. Because the places that situation can go will not be anything beneficial to our lives.
That's one thing I had to learn very quickly and humble myself because I'm a very spicy girl that doesn't like to be told what to do. And I had to realize that there was going to be situations because you and I were connected that I wasn't going to understand, and that I had to trust you, that when you looked at me, or sometimes you don't even say, let's go. You give me a look and it is, Hannah, grab your stuff, grab my hand. We are leaving this place right now. And I fought that for a long time because that thought of that broke my heart. Like that, I'd never really experienced that growing up. Like I was always welcome anywhere. And I'm a peacemaker. Like I'm like, we can figure everything out. Like nothing needs to escalate. Like we can use our words and talk. And that's not always the case. There's deep rooted history, and especially between the white culture and the black culture. I'm sure there's a lot of different cultures, but with just the experiences that I have experienced, there's still deep rooted history and fear. And being a mom of black children, that breaks my heart, but also it's such a beautiful opportunity for me to share God's unconditional love and grace and teach my kids that, so that they can change, like legit change the world and change the way that people see
Humans.
color. Yeah, humans.
Growing up, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is one of he's my number one, like, role model. And I think about what he had to go through during his era, and just the desire for unity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I still think we need a lot of work, a lot of areas, but just to stop and sit and see where we're at right now is a very beautiful thing. We've had a black president. You see more interracial marriages, more mixed kids, more, black and white coming together. That's a very beautiful thing. And I think we have to keep pressing on to that. And while still understanding, what the black culture has gone through is very important. I think a lot of people don't want to talk about the history of,
Mm-hmm.
of, of the black culture, but there's a lot of things there. And I saw a video a couple weeks ago, and it was a black doctor talking about, when I think back to the beginning of my life, I take it back and it's to my parents where they were born at. And so thinking about, my dad who was born in Maryland, my mom born in California, like that's the starting point we like to reference. And this can really apply for all cultures, but especially black people. Like he said before then, like they came from we're from Africa. And so he said when he actually went back to where he was from, like this connection to the land he felt was incredible. And just like the people he was surrounded by, the energy that he was submerged in felt so authentic that it didn't feel like where his parents were from. And when we look back at our history as African Americans in America, the first thing that we can like trace back to is slavery. So that starting point, such a hard time, such like unimaginable time. Like
Yeah.
that's where our roots in this country started from. And so you can't think that there's not trauma, there's not scars. We're in this sensitive ass generation now of era of understanding our emotions, and people need to understand that that's where black people are from, or the starting point in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, there's going to be frustration and anger and hurt and all these feelings that honestly we may not have some people might have the maturity to even digest, understand.
Yeah. I sure didn't at first. Like, I remember having a talk with one of our friends, Jason, who's a black man, and it was about our, when we didn't have kids at the time, and it was about when we have kids. And we got into a pretty heated argument because
I think he were heated.
I was heated. He
was
doesn't,
calm.
Jason never gets heated.
Hannah was spicy.
I was, yeah. And,
That's
but
coming up a lot. Just saying.
yes, okay. Maybe I need to work on something. We'll talk
Oh,
about that later.
therapy.
But the conversation, like, I'm going to paraphrase it very quickly here, but my argument was that when you have your kids, you have every like right and option to tell them however much information you want them to know. And I was like, the more information of like the struggles that like I'm a white woman, I'm going to have black children. I didn't feel it necessary for me to tell my kids, hey, when you get pulled over from a police officer, you need to do X, Y, and Z because you are black, you look different, and you need in a way to protect yourself more than your friend Johnny over here. And my argument was you're almost creating racism because of that. You're telling your kids because you're black, this is going to happen. And he helped me beautifully see that it is not telling them that because they are black, this is going to happen to them, but it is giving them the tools that if they were ever in a situation, that they would know how to act and how to be safe. And that, again, was just my naive viewpoint on it, wanting to say like racism doesn't happen until it does happen. And yes, we have come a very long way with white and black, but there are still our children, sadly, will still have situations where they are treated differently based on the color of their skin. And as a parent, again, it is my goal to give them as many tools as I can to help them be safe, to be respectful, and at the end of the day, leave everyone that they come in contact with seeing the goodness and the love of God through them.
Amen. You're still spicy.
I am.
You're cute spicy though.
I get very passionate about some things.
Yeah, rightfully so.
Yeah.
But I feel that's what the conversation aspect and like the vulnerability, communication, all that kind of fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. You've helped me.
It's a two-way street. I think it's important to like just keep exposing ourselves to different scenarios and communities and doing different things.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my first few times going to country clubs. That was wild. Like, talk about two different sides of the spectrum of just like the isolated blackness.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was in a country club and this black guy, he's probably like, very limited number of black people here. And he pulled up on his golf cart. He's like, hey, he's like, where you from? He's like, I don't see many black people around here. I was like, I was thinking the same thing. And just that instant connection we had. He's like, anytime you want to golf, let me know.
Yeah.
And
I
just like
remember
that connection that we had. And just like that comfortability, vulnerability just comes from exposure. So I really want to keep exposing our kids to the good stuff, the bad stuff, the hard things,
Mm-hmm.
the happy things, to understand that like our kids will have privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I had privilege playing sports, and I had privilege going to college, and I had privilege going to NFL, and privilege owning a business. Like, privilege with intention is great. And we'll just keep being intentional, keep educating them as our job as parents.
That's good.
And on that note, we out.
Peace.